As the stars twinkled in the clear night sky, a group of friends gathered around a crackling campfire in the heart of the woods. The firelight danced on their faces, casting long shadows and illuminating the trees around them. The air was filled with the sweet scent of pine and the sound of crickets chirping in the distance. They had come to escape the hustle and bustle of their daily lives and to reconnect with nature and each other. Seated at the center of the circle was Jack, a seasoned storyteller with a knack for spinning tales that could captivate any audience. He was a man in his late 40s, with graying hair and a twinkle in his eye that hinted at a life filled with adventure. The group had been eagerly awaiting his stories, and as he leaned forward, they fell silent, ready to be transported into his world of imagination. "All right, gather round, everyone," Jack said, his voice low and inviting. "I have a few stories for you tonight, each one more mysterious than the last. Let's start with a tale from my own childhood, a story about a haunted house." The group leaned in closer, their eyes fixed on Jack as he began. "When I was about 12 years old," Jack started, "there was an old, abandoned house at the end of our street. It was a place we kids all avoided. The windows were broken, the paint was peeling, and it had an eerie, deserted look. But the real reason we stayed away was the rumor that it was haunted. One summer evening, my friends dared me to go inside. Being the brave, or perhaps foolish, boy that I was, I accepted the challenge. As I approached the house, the air seemed to grow colder, and an unsettling silence fell over the neighborhood. I pushed open the creaking front door and stepped inside. The interior was just as creepy as the outside. The furniture was covered in dust, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling. I wandered through the rooms, my heart pounding with every step. Suddenly, I heard a faint whisper. I couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like a child crying. I followed the sound to the attic, where I found an old, dusty mirror. As I looked into the mirror, I saw the reflection of a little girl standing behind me. She had long, dark hair and a sad expression on her face. I spun around, but there was no one there. When I looked back at the mirror, she was gone. Terrified, I ran out of the house and never went back. To this day, I can't explain what I saw. The group shivered at the thought of the haunted house, and Jack allowed a moment of silence before continuing. "That was just a warm-up," Jack said with a grin. "Now, let me tell you about the time I picked up a mysterious hitchhiker. It was a stormy night, and I was driving down a lonely stretch of highway. The rain was coming down in sheets, making it difficult to see the road. As I rounded a bend, I saw a figure standing by the side of the road, drenched and holding out a thumb. Feeling sorry for them, I pulled over and offered a ride. The hitchhiker was a young woman, shivering from the cold. She thanked me and got in, and we drove in silence for a while. She didn't say much, and I didn't press her for details. But as we drove, I noticed something strange. The rain seemed to pass right through her, as if she wasn't really there. After a few miles, she suddenly asked me to stop. "This is my stop," she said, pointing to an old, decrepit house by the side of the road. I pulled over, and she got out. But as soon as she stepped out of the car, she vanished into thin air. I was left sitting there, stunned and wondering if I had just given a ride to a ghost. The friends exchanged uneasy glances, feeling the weight of the eerie story settling over them. But Jack wasn't done yet. "Now I will tell you another creepy story," Jack said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I'll tell you about the legend of the forest spirit. This forest we're camping in is said to be home to a guardian spirit, protector of the woods. According to the legend, the spirit appears to those who are lost or in danger, guiding them to safety. But it's also said that the spirit doesn't take kindly to those who harm the forest. Years ago, a group of loggers came to this area, determined to cut down as many trees as they could. Despite warnings from the local villagers, they pressed on. One night, as they slept in their camp, a thick fog rolled in. When they woke up, they found themselves surrounded by the towering trees, their paths blocked and their equipment mysteriously broken. In the midst of the fog, they saw a figure emerging from the trees. It was a tall, ethereal being with glowing eyes and a presence that demanded respect. The spirit spoke to them, its voice echoing through the forest, warning them to leave and never return. Terrified, the loggers fled, abandoning their mission. They never spoke of the encounter again, but the villagers knew the truth: the forest spirit had protected its home once again. And now it is a final story. Tonight it was one of those late nights at the office. They stretch on endlessly and drain your last ounce of energy from your weary bones. Exhausted and longing for the solace of home, I made the decision to walk. As I stepped out onto the deserted streets, a chill ran down my spine. I tried to shake off the unease. It gnawed at my mind. I told myself it was just a trick of the mind from fatigue. But as I walked, a sense of foreboding settled over me like a shroud. It filled the night with a tense feeling. As I rounded the corner onto the familiar stretch of pavement leading to my street, I saw a sudden movement. It caught the corner of my eye and sent a shiver down my spine. I halted. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. A creeping unease settled over me like a suffocating blanket. There, in the enveloping darkness, stood a figure. An ethereal mist shrouded her. It seemed to swirl and twist around her like a cloak of shadows. My breath caught in my throat. I beheld her grotesque face. She twisted her features into a nightmarish imitation of humanity. It sent a chill through my veins. Her eyes had no light or life. They bore into mine with an intense gaze. It seemed to pierce reality and into my soul. It was as if she could see through me. She was peeling back the layers of my mind to expose the raw, primal fear within. She appeared from the shadows. Then she vanished back into the darkness. This left me standing there in bewildered disbelief. I tried to shake off the feeling of dread that washed over me, but it clung to me like a wet, suffocating blanket. My rational mind attempted to assure me that it was just a trick, a byproduct of my exhaustion and stress. By the time I reached the sanctuary of my home, my heart was pounding in my chest like a drum. With trembling hands, I locked the door behind me and leaned against it for a moment, struggling to catch my breath. When the sun finally rose, I felt a fleeting sense of relief. I went about my day trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. As darkness fell once more, I knew I had no choice but to venture out. The thought of facing the night again filled me with dread, but staying inside, cowering in fear, was not an option. With every step I took, my senses were heightened. Then, without warning, she appeared before me again. Her ghostly form materialized from the swirling mist, a harbinger of doom that sent chills down my spine. The air around me grew colder, heavy with a sense of impending evil emanating from her twisted figure. Her hollow eyes, devoid of life yet filled with a malevolent intensity, fixed on me, piercing through my very soul. This time there was no mistaking her intentions. Her presence was far more menacing, a palpable threat that hung in the air like a thick fog. She let out a blood-curdling scream, a sound so chilling that it seemed to pierce the very fabric of the silent night. The scream echoed through the empty streets, reverberating off the buildings and sending waves of terror crashing over me. In an instant, she lunged towards me, her ghostly form moving with a terrifying swiftness. I stumbled back, my heart pounding so hard that it felt as if it might burst from my chest. Desperation clawed at me, and I knew that I had to make one final, desperate attempt for freedom. Summoning every ounce of strength I had left, I pushed myself to my feet and lunged forward with all my might. And then, miraculously, I broke free from her grasp. I finally reached my home, my sanctuary amidst the encroaching darkness. The moment I crossed the threshold, I felt a surge of relief wash over me, but it was fleeting, quickly replaced by an overwhelming sense of dread. In the depths of my heart, I understood that this encounter had set me on a path from which there was no turning back. The nightmare had begun, and I would have to see it through to the end, no matter the cost. Jack leaned back, his stories complete. The campfire crackled, filling the silence with its comforting warmth. The friends sat in quiet contemplation, their minds filled with images of haunted houses, mysterious hitchhikers, ancient forest spirits, and haunted street. Well, Jack said finally, I hope you enjoyed the stories. Remember, the world is full of mysteries, and sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. Sleep tight, everyone. With that, they all settled into their sleeping bags, the stories lingering in their minds as they drifted off to sleep under the starry sky. The forest around them seemed to hum with a quiet magic, as if the spirit of Jack's tales had come alive in the night.